Hey, it's Larry. Welcome to Stewarding the Wealth Transfer. Well, today I want to talk about how I think the wealth transfer is going to shake the world in ways that you probably hadn't thought about. Last month, Che Ahn announced his candidacy for the governor of California. And a lot of people I know are just writing him off, but they don't know who he is. And they way underestimate what I think God is going to do.
Can you clarify, did you have this dream about Che before it was announced, or did you see it first that he was going to run and then you had a dream?
In the dream, I saw a delayed and slow start.
And I believe that God is elevating him, and I think that you're going to see him accomplish an amazing thing. And I think the world, literally the world, I believe will be shocked. I think he's going to become the
Lord showed me yesterday in the vision and today in the vision that he will.
You know, we talk often on this channel about how God is going to increase our affluence so that we can increase his influence as we help steward in the kingdom of God. And governance is a big part of what I think the kingdom of God is about. And, you know, many people don't really think the church is called to impact culture, and they just want to passively sit back. But I want to talk about a man who's got a fire in his belly. And the first time I really heard about him was I got a prophetic word when I was finishing up my time at Supernatural Ministry School in Rainier, and I got to bring a prophet to the airport, and he said, Larry, I want to tell you that I think that you need to go meet Che Ahn and find out about that network, Harvest International Ministries. Probably got that word in 2018. And then I didn't get to go in 2019. But in 2020, when everything slowed down, they didn't shut down their conference. And I found that out, and I thought, I've got time. I love people who are standing up. And so I went down. And it was honestly a fantastic conference. You got great value because the speakers were conservatives, and it was hosted by Che Ahn at Harvest Rock Church in Pasadena. It was amazing because there's probably 10 speakers, and there was probably 90 or 100 people crazy enough like me to show up. And so, I got to sit in the front 2-3 rows all the time. And normally these 2,000 seat Ambassador Auditorium can generally be full. And I loved the conference. That was the first week of August in 2020. I signed up for Wagner University. It began a journey. And so every year, twice a year, I've seen Che at an event. And because of my time at Wagner University, I've even got to shake his hand a number of times. And one time he invited me out to lunch, and I got to ride with him in a group and then personally, and he prophesied over me. And I've seen that he's a man of character. And I believe that God is elevating him. And I think that you're going to see him accomplish an amazing thing. And I think the world, literally the world, I believe will be shocked. And you're going, well, what is it, Larry? I think he's going to become the governor of California. And you might go, well, that's crazy. No, pastor. I hear you talk about him. How could that be? Well, anybody, in my opinion, who underestimates this man, his network, his calling, his wisdom, and the power of God directing him and leading him, they way underestimate a giant in the spirit. And today I'm going to give you 8 reasons why I believe that Che Ahn is a very formidable candidate for the position of governor. You might be going, oh, Larry, that's so crazy. He's a fierce man of faith and principle. He did not back down, even though the governor was calling him out saying, Che, you're going to be fined $1 million a day. You're going to go to jail. Che's like, I'm going to serve God. I'm going to follow God. He's not going to be pressured by men. It was like a modern day example of you're going to be thrown into the furnace and it's going to be 7 times hotter. And he's like, my God is going to protect me, and I'm going to lead the people of God who are under my care and protection. I'm going to stand up for the principles. In my opinion, the very thing that has been the biggest challenge of the last decade in Che's life is the very thing that God is going to use to propel him to the front. Because even though he can't run against Gavin Newsom knows his name. And Gavin Newsom is the face of who California has become. And Che is the perfect candidate against that ungodly situation. You don't realize, unless you know, how big Che's network is, and it's only going to grow bigger. And you might be going, well, Larry, do you know something that we don't know? What I know is that Che doesn't even count anymore how many people are in his network. I think when it exceeded 70,000 people, I think that was like 10 years ago, he stopped counting because they're around the world. In America, there are hundreds of churches under Che. You might be going, well, compared to like the Assemblies of God, he's small, isn't he? Yeah, he is. But his influence is great. And of the 5 pastors that manned up and sued Newsom in 2020, he was chosen by a very astute legal team of constitutional lawyers. And they said, hey, Che, you've got the biggest network here. And Che, over decades, has been investing in the kingdom, investing in his network, and people in California, pastors, big leaders, big names. He's worked with the Billy Graham Association. Che is a team player. He's paid his dues. He's earned the respect of everybody who's known him. Other pastors who don't really appreciate the theology of New Testament Christians who believe that the Apostolic is still for today. I have been a part of the Assemblies of God since I was born. The Assemblies of God doesn't believe in modern day apostles. They don't believe in the office of the prophet. And Che not only believes it, he ordains prophets and he ordains apostles. And he doesn't push it, but he is called by most people in the network an apostle, because I believe he is. And I think that you're going to see what an apostle does in California. And the name apostle was so offensive to the original Christian disciples. They did not like the name apostle because it was like a member of the Roman legion, a high-ranking member of the Roman legion that was tasked with going to recently conquered territories and bringing the culture of Rome into that territory, so that if the leader of Rome would visit, they would not be able to tell the difference of the culture in this newly conquered territory and Rome itself, because apostles were sent ones from the emperor and they were tasked with controlling culture. And somehow, when the idea of losing the concept of an apostle has just made a toothless Western Christianity, even when they have different theologies, Baptists respect Che because he does what he says and he says what he does. And he's surrounded himself with leaders. I mean, the people that I see running with Che, they are not mediocre level leaders. People like Dr. Rob Cavell and everybody that he surrounds himself, it's just people of excellence. The people that are in Che's network are not pansies. Jenny Donnelly is another one. She's that lady in Seattle that Antifa and Transtifa reached out against and, abused them and were throwing balloons full of urine and all kinds of things, kind of attacking different people that were, dared come to this Christian concert in Seattle. He has a track record of taking good people and they become great while they follow Che's example. He's not afraid of women in leadership. He empowers women in leadership. He's an amazing leader that God is using to raise up leaders for the next generation. What you probably don't know is that he's got, I believe, 3 degrees. His regular degree was in history, because when he talks about history, he knows history in amazing detail. And it makes, when he talks about culture, he's such a well-spoken, knowledgeable person about whatever he speaks about. He's going to be a very formidable debater because he understands society and psychology and history and leadership. And he can quote Churchill and all these presidential perspectives, national perspectives, historical perspectives. He's a studied man of history. He's the only really large name pastor I've ever seen preach on the wealth transfer. And I've seen him do it twice. And I loved how he does it. And you can, I think, even on YouTube, see that he speaks out for the wealth transfer. Most people who are well known don't talk about the wealth transfer in church. And I think it's one of the most interesting things. I wouldn't say it's his primary focus at all, but that's what we talk about. But he supports it and he believes it. I'm going to tell you that it's really an advantage for him to be Asian. And you might go, well, that's kind of racist for you to say, Larry. Well, I think we all have a respect and a regard for the way the Asians are so productive and so efficient, and they're hardworking, and they sacrifice and they give to the next generation. And there's a lot of Asian people in the HIM network that fly in from numerous Eastern countries. I've sat at those meetings, and as a business leader, I've talked to them and they ask what I do, and I begin to talk about the wealth transfer and about my studies of Clement, and they become super interested. And then I start talking to these Asian men, and I find out, and they're with their wives. So these Asian families have tremendous influence, tremendous wealth. It's like silent stealth wealth, and they stick together. And I think that I'm extending a compliment to them. I believe that he was born in Korea. I think at 5 years old, he came over to America. He was raised on the East Coast. His dad was a pastor on the East Coast, and his dad was more of a high church pastor. But during the Jesus People movement, Che kind of, came into the prophetic, and God has had his hand on Che. That Bill Johnson and Che at the Toronto Blessing in Canada had fallen out under the power of God right together. And I believe that it was John Arnott called out and said, hey, you, Che, and you, Bill, you need to grab hands, and I'm praying for the leadership of the Church of California. Bill Johnson in Northern California is going to become a powerhouse, and Che Ahn in Southern California is going to be a huge influence in the church in Southern California. And who knew how prophetic those words were? Because Bill Johnson has had his day, and I would say that he's still an amazing man of God, has an amazing network, but people don't realize, in my opinion and observation, Che's network is much bigger, much deeper, much stronger than what Bethel's network, as impressive as it is. Bethel's is more outward and shiny, and Che's is more inward and kind of humble and quiet. His network is powerful, and I believe formidable. And they've become so engaged in politics, they even initiated a PAC, because there's all these business leaders that they reach out to. And before COVID, I didn't care a lot about politics, but in the last 5 years, I've been super engaged in politics. I've paid attention to local races, county races, and even gubernatorial races here in our state. And it takes a number of things to win. It takes an amazing network. Che's got that. It takes the ability to fundraise. Che's got that. God's got it because of the wealth transfer. They need great branding. Look at the messaging he's got with his print and his video. They're super high quality. His speaking is going to be impeccable. His character is undeniable. The strategy is led from God himself. This is a serious candidate, and I believe God is going to carry him across the finish line. And it will not be easy, but I believe that God is going to do it. They know billionaires, and I think there's more billionaires that are coming. I think I might even be talking to some of them. And I think that we, as people who believe in the wealth transfer with a prophetic destiny on our lives, I believe we're going to be called to come together and to creatively help finance what can be kingdom leaders of states. And I think that we're going to come together and do fundraising for Jay on the other side of the wealth transfer and watch what a difference it makes. Because Donald Trump has stripped the Democratic Party of so many of their nefarious fundraising ways. And watch, he's going to begin to clear up voting anomalies that I think many started in my own state, my own left-leaning state of Washington. And if we have fair voting and fair fundraising, I think that Che is going to be an amazing candidate, and I think that you're going to see him be elevated. Now, there's prophecies that I'm going to show of Manuel Johnson where he says twice, I've seen an open vision of where Che Ahn is going to be the new governor of California. And Andrew Whalen on the Elijah list made a very strong argument that God revealed to him before it was public knowledge. He had a dream the night before. He was thinking about, how come I saw this dream of Che Ahn and Lou Engle was involved in it? And I'm going to show you these portions because I believe that God is raising up apostolic leaders. I believe that God is raising up prophetic leaders. And I believe he could be stirring you to make a bigger difference. I believe that God, there's a divine collision between the status quo and the way it's been and the way that it will be. And I believe as the glory of God comes down, you're going to find that your spine is stiffening and that you're rising up and your righteous indignation is coming and you're willing to take risks for God. But we've seen tremendous winning coming out of DC with Trump, but I don't think we're going to be satisfied with that. And I think as this time of tumult comes to a head, you're going to see the wealth of the wicked has been stored up, but it's beginning to be destabilized. And there's so many areas of the wealth transfer. I mean, as I watch silver and gold, they've just skyrocketed. Cryptocurrencies are going up in a great way again. And yet I think that we're returning to constitutional money. I'm really curious about what Che Ahn is going to do because, as you know, I've studied Kim Clement's writing so much. And Kim Clement never wrote off California. He continually says, California, you're going to have a great future. I see great things for California. People are going to be shocked at the blessings of God that comes to California. And as I've read what he said, I've marveled. I thought, God, why in the world would you bless California? Because we know it's been, the Hollywood and pornography, and there's so many illicit things that have come out of California, but God's hand is on California. And Kim Clement makes it very clear, don't write off California. My hand is on California. And I think now, tying these things together, is my heart jumped forward when I watched on the private network of Harvest International Ministries a month ago, Che Ahn announcing his candidacy. I thought, oh my word.
Can you clarify, did you have this dream about Che before it was announced, or did you see it first that he was going to run and then you had a dream?
Really had no grid of what's going on in his world at all. And all I know is after this dream, the morning of this dream, I wake up and writing in my notes, I look up on social media, and there is Becca Greenwood's post about Che Ahn running for governor. And so the dream happened before I knew he was running. In the dream, I saw a delayed and slow start to a gathering or a conference of some sort that Che Ahn was going to be speaking at. Then I saw Lou Engle praying among the crowd. So Lou was not on stage, he was in the crowd. That as Lou prayed, I began to go around and save seats throughout this assembly hall. Finally, I don't even know fully what took place, but a momentum shift took place, and suddenly the seats began to fill, and Che Ahn took the stage. I think there's going to be some warfare, and I don't think that should surprise us either.
No, of course it's going to be all-out warfare because what the values he would bring to the nation. I'm from California most of my life, so I love that state. But
Pastor Che Ahn, is going to win the seat. And I saw the vision. So the next governor of California will be pastor, but I guess at that time his name is going to change from pastor to Governor Che Ahn.
You might go, well, Larry, who are you to know if he's a legitimate gubernatorial candidate? Well, in my state, in the last 5 years since we've had COVID, I've met the conservative candidates of the last 2 cycles who've ran for governor, and I know what they were like, and I know what they're made of, and none of them have held a candle to who Che is and what his network would represent. I mean, he's got the kingdom of God, but as the church unites and comes around him, and these other pastors with different theologies, it's not like they're going to say, I believe Che because of his non-cessationist views. They're going to say because he's a Bible-believing man of integrity and character, and we need to get behind him. And I think you're going to see the church unify, because it's gotten so bad under Newsom and it's continuing to get worse. And so I think you're going to see that Che Ahn is going to become the governor of California. I don't think he's going to race off in the beginning and lead, but I think there's going to be a groundswell of support. And I believe that I'm going to call on you, and I'm going to, on the other time, as this race heats up, the primaries are next June, so they're 11 months away. The wealth transfer is going to happen before that. I believe that people of this channel are going to come together, and we're going to have Zoom calls about what we can do. And we may even meet down in California, and our incoming affluence is for his kingdom's influence. And I believe Che is more of a man of God than any I've ever seen in my whole life. I know people who've known him for decades. I'm getting to know him. I think that you are going to be shocked at what happens as the kingdom of God comes and the will of God is done. So pray with me for Pastor Che Ahn, and as the wealth transfer happens, let's begin to strategize about what you might be called to do, and I'm going to think about what Tracy and I might be called to do, because we can give limited dollars now, and some of us can give more than others, but when the time of the wealth transfer arrives, the Democratic Party is not going to be able to do what we can do. And I think that Trump is going to be making sure that these big elections are fair. I think election integrity is coming. I think that campaign finance reform and things are going to be watched thanks to Doge and other things like that. And I think the reason that California, in the eyes of Kim Clement, has such a blessed future is because there's going to be a godly person like Chayon who's going to be inspiring Sacramento and already has a presence in LA. And I believe that the destiny of California is great, and I think it's going to impact and shake the whole left coast as well as the east coast. And I believe that God is going to speak to the world, that a man of God can be raised up. And I think Che is a man of God, more so than any I've ever known, that I've seen repetitively over a number of years. And I have so many friends who've known him for decades. I just think it's an amazing thing, and I just want to bring it to your attention, and I wonder what your part will be, because I believe that God is calling us to pray for him, and we will be called to support him. And I think that it will provide an example of the church unifying, and we're sick and tired of a godless generation having all the influence, because God is bringing you affluence so that his influence can be increased. So thank you for your time.